Howdy heck and hey my dudes, just coming in to let you know that this is an edited down version of a Twitch stream that we did live. Link to my Twitch is in the description. We play games, we do dramatic readings, we're going to be writing some stories there, so if you're interested, links in the description. I have a publicized graphic novel available all over the world, so if you want to know what my most recent written project looks like, that's down there as well. Content warning for zombies, profanity, blood, excessive gore, 18 plus that story. And I also run an Etsy shop now where you can buy digital Twitch streaming assets, so stuff like emotes, overlays, alerts, badges, all that kind of stuff. Link to that is also going to be in the description. You know the drill, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. This plug is over, enjoy the reading. Where we left off, we finished page 7. And I decided that what I wanted to do is I also want to... Sorry, I need to grab something. I also want to talk about, like, kind of my comic making process, because I get asked this quite a bit. I get asked this quite a lot on, like, how I go about making the comic pages and, you know, like, what goes into it and stuff like that. And I've been asked, like, a lot of questions about every phase. I've been asked about, like, writing the story, making the pages, self-publishing, because this book is, like, physical copies of this are available in bookstores. It is a self-published book. I get asked about all kinds of things, but, like, I think for now the one that I'm most comfortable talking about is the comic making process, because that's the process that doesn't take a whole lot of brain effort to explain. If I'm going to talk about story structure and stuff like that, then I want to do, like, a proper video, like, actually script it out and give actual useful information on storytelling, but comic panels are, like, pretty straightforward. Okay, so obviously when it comes to, like, making comics specifically, we're talking comics specifically, but, like, in this case, like, the first step is always the same, no matter what medium you're working on, if you're creating, like, any kind of creative story whatsoever. And that's the script, right? Now, we're not gonna go over, like, scripts today. We're not gonna go over, like, how to create a cohesive story. We're not gonna go over, like, dialogue and really specific things like that. But the script is the first, like, thing that you really need to do. So we'll go script. And I have a couple of, like, scripts that I'm currently either not using or I've put on hold for a minute, because I just have so many projects. If I can let me find the old script for a Christmas special that I made, not last year, but the year before. It was called Christmas with Caden. So when it comes to writing scripts, you can make them as vague or as detailed as you like. I'm someone who writes a lot of detail because I tend to have very vivid ideas on how I want things to be laid out, and then, like, I also have a really shit memory, so I might forget how those things are laid out. So if I go, like, somewhere kind of at the top... Oh, no, get rid of that. So I use a Chrome extension called UMeScript, and this is what it looks like. It's, like, official, like, proper scripting format. I use this to script all of my comics. I originally did it like this because, as I've mentioned time and time again, Forget Me Not was originally supposed to be an animated film, and it will be an animated film one day, so but we're gonna do some tweaks and, like, adapt the story, like, properly, because even though this is written in, like, film format, the dialogue and the pacing is very much comic format. So this is how I write all of my scripts. You've got all the dialogue, you've got, like, actions, you've got, like, facial expressions. Kaden looks surprised. Like, just little stuff like this. This is how I write them. Literally, I have a friend who, when they write scripts, it's literally just bullet points. With, like, dialogue ideas or maybe a stage direction or so. But for the Christmas with Caden thing, I didn't really think it was worth doing a whole proper, like, genuine kind of movie-esque script for. It was only, like, 5 pages long. So I just did it like this, which is how I used to do comics, used to do scripts before I discovered UMeScript was a thing. It's pretty much formatted the exact same way. Facial expressions, Siobhan looks upset. Stage directions, Hayley takes notice, but Caden's still browsing the store. Dialogue, exact same format, it's just presented more professionally with Yumi script. Alright, let's just start from the beginning, right? We'll do this first, well, maybe not the whole first page, but we'll start from opening shot of the snowy town, okay? And then zoom out to be a snow globe. Because this is a comic, we're gonna have to like kind of make some compromises. So we're gonna cut the zoom out and it's just gonna be a shot of Siobhan playing with the snow globe, okay? This is kind of what has to happen because some scripts are written specifically for like animation and stage direction, and some of them are really just for comics. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a bit of a compromise there for that. So once you have the script, I'm gonna keep this script open next to me, right? And what I like to do is, first things first, I will do something called thumbnailing. And basically what thumbnailing is, it's kind of like the storyboarding phase of your comic, to put it lightly. Like, if you're a storyboard artist, you would obviously thumbnail as well. You will thumbnail and then you'll like revise the storyboard. But considering like I'm an animator brain, so even though I've said this before in so many different art streams, and I am gonna write it down here. We'll write it in red because it's very, very important. Your comic pages should not be treated as storyboards, okay? They're just not. And I've talked about this in a previous stream, but you can really, really tell when an animator brain is trying to make comics and they haven't tuned into the comics like medium. They're just running on their animator or their storyboard artist brain. You can really tell it's really, really fucking boring to read. Anyway, so when it comes to the thumbnailing process, it's kind of it's like the storyboard phase of your comic, but it shouldn't be treated as like actual animation storyboarding, and I'll show you what I mean. So normally I have a file on my iPad. I do all of my thumbnailing on Procreate on my iPad. I do it on the go. It feels way less professional. It feels a lot more casual, and because it feels a lot more casual, I'm kind of just able to get it free flowing a lot easier, and that's what you want. Your thumbnails aren't supposed to be super detailed. So when I make thumbnails on my iPad, I literally just draw a rectangle. Right, that's supposed to be my page. Okay, that's my page. And then as I go, I will fill in little, like, what kind of panels I want. So the first panel is Siobhan holding a snow globe, right? That's our establishing shot. And then Hayley's in the background saying, "You always seem so fascinated by those things when we see them. Why not just take one?" So because in the original comic, it was written, in the original script, sorry, it was written for like animation. You would have a zoom out and then you would see Hayley revealed in the background and then you would have that line. To be fair, I'm not normally this kind of artist. This is a learning experience. Yeah, look, I learned all of this the hard way. And I'm not perfect at this. Like, there's still stuff that I'm yet to learn. It's just I get asked so many times how I do this. So this is why I decided to make this part of the art stream today. So, yes, the script says it's an establishing shot. Siobhan's holding a snow globe and Hayley says her line. So, because it's written for animation, if you were storyboarding, what you would do, right? We'll have two pages. One is like a storyboard brain, and one is a comic brain. So this one is comic, and this one is storyboard. And you'll understand what I mean in a sec. So, with the comic, I think it's a really fun idea. We just have Siobhan like here. Her and her little curl, right? I'm gonna draw her the way I drew her for this special when the special came out, because this is literally just a thumbnail. Right, there's the snow globe. We'll make it like really big so you can kind of see what's in it. I've never had a snow globe before. I'm assuming they're fucking massive. And then we'll put like a little house, some like trees or something, and just kind of indicate that there's snow in there. They don't have to be super detailed. Your thumbnails don't have to look very good, like, at all. So there she's holding the snow globe. Maybe in the final version the snow globe will be bigger, maybe there'll be some kind of like, maybe the snow globe will be like a light source. If you have any notes like that, I normally put them on the side, so we'll put like snow globe is a light source. Right? So she's there, she's got a little snow globe, she's happy, and then we'll put like Haley in the back here. And we kind of, even though Haley's just a background element, we want to make sure that it's kind of clear what the actual page is going to look like, if that makes sense. So we'll put her in. Let's say she's like walking, right? That doesn't look like she's walking. If I put this leg in the front, it'll look like she's walking. But that's, there, see, like that. Cool. It's a hand, hair, and we'll put the eye like there because she's looking at Vaughn, right? Put the floor in. Again, try not to put too much effort into these because this is literally just the foundation for what the page will eventually end up looking like. Cool. So, there. And then I normally try my best to format where the actual speech bubble will go as well. So what I might do is I'm going to move Vaughn like this. Yep. And because I've actually done publishing before, I published with Amazon Print and I also published with Ingram Spark. The best thing to do in order to make that entire process as easy as possible is to try and avoid putting any speech bubbles like in these areas of the page. You want to try and keep them as close to the middle as possible because otherwise Amazon is going to be a fucking bitch and it's going to take you like 17 years just to figure out what the formatting issue is unless you talk to a real person. I spent 3 weeks trying to figure out what the formatting issue was with my book, and I spoke to 2 different people before I actually got the answer, and it was formatting issues. So just general rule of thumb, keep the speech bubbles as close to the middle as you can. I also try my best to put them where they're not obstructing too much of the background. So we'll put Haley's speech bubble there, right? And then normally I don't work with my script next to me when I'm actually making the comic pages. I'll have the thumbnails next to me instead, which is why I will write like the dialogue next to it as well. I won't write the whole line because this is literally just a demo, just to like show you what the process is. So we'll leave it with "You always seem so," right? And I write the dialogue there. That's the first panel, right? If I was to take the exact same prompt, opening shot of a snowy town, zooming out to see it's actually Siobhan holding a snow globe in the department store, and then Haley saying, "You always seem so fascinated by those things." If I was to take that exact same prompt, but do it with like a storyboard mindset, it'd look completely different. We'd have like this establishing shot here. We'd put like a town, right? Some trees. Like a path or something, right? And it's snowing. It looks like rain, but it's just a thumbnail. It's snowing. And then you would see Siobhan on the next panel like this, holding the snow globe with the exact same little town in it, right? And then you'd get a shot like this. Because in the storyboard brain the camera would pan out. I guess the easiest way to do it would be to actually draw it in a storyboard sense. In an animator brain, right? They read this prompt, and what they do, these drawings are getting scrunklier and scrunklier as we go. So a storyboard artist or an animator would read this line, right? And they would go, okay, cool. So what they'll do is they'll draw this one panel, right? And in a storyboard brain, what they would do is they would add these markings. So this is the first marking, right? That shows where the camera starts. And then they zoom out, right? And that zoom out would show Siobhan holding the snow globe, right? And then it would zoom out even further, and that would be the shot that's got Hayley in it. This is how, maybe not how all storyboard artists think, but this is how I think when I see shots like this, because it's, you see the town, you zoom out, you see Siobhan, and then you establish that Hayley is also in the room with this shot. And that's exactly what this panel here is doing, right? So you would see Hayley walking past, taking notice of the snow globe, and then you would have another dialogue box. Not a dialogue box, sorry, another panel. And this would finally be Hayley saying, "You always seem so fascinated by those things, why not just take one?" Right? Put the dialogue there, right? This is how I used to do my comics. This is the storyboard mindset. Look at how many extra panels that takes up. Yeah, you get your establishing shot. Yeah, you clarify that Hayley is the one carrying the snow globe. Yes, you confirm that, Siobhan's holding the snow globe, and you confirm that Hayley takes notice. But why do it in a storyboard format and waste so much page space conveying one action when you can show it all in one panel? And that's really what it's all about when it comes to comics. It's about finding efficient ways to get your story across, get the pacing across correctly, but also in a way that's visually appealing. This feels like a drag. This scene takes 6 years. This one, 10 minutes. In terms of like lingering and stuff. So I would recommend you avoid doing shit like this. You avoid trying to put this mentality onto an A4, or in my case a 7" by 10" page. It's just not gonna work. So this is generally how I would go about it. So you always seem so fascinated by those things, why don't you just take one? The next line, I remember very specifically how I did this in the animatic, so I'm trying not to because it's different medium. So what I would do here is I would take this. There's no action for Siobhan, it's just Siobhan's dialogue. So what I'll do is I'll put this, and I'll take some creative liberties, right? And I'll like do a close-up shot of her putting the snow globe down. Right? Let's do that. She's put the snow globe down, right? And we'll maybe push this like way over here. And we push it way over there so that we can put the dialogue box here and it doesn't obstruct what it is she's doing. It's still readable that she's putting the snow globe down. You know what I mean? It's all about not blocking the audience from the visuals so they can still see what's going on, but also trying to maintain a nice reading flow. The way I would go about it, because I say keep your speech bubbles as close to the middle as you can, is I would do something relative to like, just as an example, like that, right? It's nice, it's smooth. Whereas if I put this speech bubble here, oh wait, sorry, we'll put that speech bubble there, and then we'll put that one there, and then there's like another one here, and there's a big long one here. It's just not nice. At least in my opinion. That's my personal opinion on that. I won't go ahead and say that's fact. That's just what I like doing. So she puts the snow globe down. We got the dialogue box. Let's say that I've written down what's supposed to be in that dialogue box there. And you go on throughout the page. What we could do is maybe put Hayley here. I'll show you a really good example of page structure in a second. Oh, actually, can I show that? That's actually a bit of a spoiler for book 2. I don't know if I can show that. Hang on. I'll figure it out. But we'll put Hayley here as an example, right? Little cutie. And let's say she's like got her arm out like this. And then we'll put her speech bubble here, because you don't want it right up on the edge. We'll put it there, right? Speaking of, it is getting to that time of year, snow season. And then you could probably put like a little Caden down here. It's been a hot minute since I've drawn my boy. I don't even remember what his hair looks like. Let's just say that's Caden. Cool. and then you would put, because his is just a small dialogue box, it's fine, you can put it there. It's not so much about like top to bottom, it's more side to side, the issue Amazon has. And then you put it is, but I don't think we'd be seeing much snow this year, right? See how much more interesting that looks? As opposed to, like here we would do the whole like, she'd put the snow globe down. You'd have, because this is only a small box, you'd only be able to write nah in there, which is the first part of her line. And then you'd probably have to do another establishing shot in order to get the rest of her dialogue on the same page. You could probably do one where like Haley is kind of looking down on Siobhan because Siobhan's so small, right? And you could put the dialogue box in the middle. Which one looks more interesting to read? Really push the boundaries of what you can and cannot do with comics. And again, try to keep things compact. If there's like 6 actions taking place in one scene, try and fit them in one panel. Because this is slow, this is boring, this is uninteresting to look at, and you only get through 2 lines of the script. This looks more fun, more interesting. Haley's like out of the panel. Caden's kind of like destroying a little bit of the rules here by just kind of being in the back. And you get through about half the page, half this page of the script, right? You get through a lot more. It's more interesting. It's more engaging, right? So that's how I thumbnail stuff. I'm gonna try and look for like a good example from book 1, but at the same time, book 1, I struggled a lot with storyboard mentality. So I don't think I'll find one. I probably have to pull up some stuff from book 2, which I'm not very happy about. But it's my own fault for like struggling with structure so much in book 1. This is the bottom half of page 2 of Forget Me Not Aconite. The pink, ignore the pink, there's something that goes over the top that I have to hide for spoiler reasons. Same with like, it's like a dialogue box. This is storyboard mentality, right? I really can't say anything other than this is storyboard mentality. The crack is just literally handwritten capital letters crack. The effects are rubbish, this is rubbish. And it's very like staged in terms of like, this is supposed to be a close-up, this is supposed to be an establishing shot, these are meant to be close-ups, and then we have the extreme close-up, you know what I mean? Very, very storyboard brain. This is what it looks like now. I can't zoom out any further than this because it will reveal stuff. But this is almost the exact same format. I chose to deliberately get rid of this panel because this panel is fucking useless for like what I was trying to convey in the page. But look at this. You really, really want to feel these sound effects, right? You really want to feel, this is supposed to be a painful moment. So you really want to feel the pain. And with comics, you actually can explore outside of the box, quite literally. This is not a box. So I tried to make it as sharp as I possibly could. I really played around with the crack sound effect. It's like, okay, what does the sound crack look like? It's very brittle. It's very, I hear the word snap. Okay, what's snap? Frail, thin, scattered, like the way the kind of crack rings out, which is why it's like very faded lines and then very strong lines in the center. You can play with these because you are not restricted to a 16:9 ratio or a 4:3 ratio, or whatever ratio your animated or live action project is. You have the freedom to do shit like this. So try to avoid this as much as you can. This looks boring. This isn't fun. Crack, oh okay, something's happened. Okay, sure, fine. Crack. Oh shit, what is going on? That's the other part as well. You kind of need to learn which parts of the script to emphasize. For me, I put way too much emphasis on the actual reaching part because I thought that would build suspense. It's supposed to be a long shot that a person looks at for an extended period of time, and because I can't control how fast people read comics, I decided to make it a longer shot, make it a longer panel, takes up more space. That was not the correct thing to do, I realized. You can still keep this, right? But see how it takes up just that little bit less space because the suspension of the crack. This is the emphasis of the page. This is what you want people to focus on. This is what you want people to go, oh shit. And so you really, really need to play with these ideas. And something that I would recommend that everybody does, I'm gonna write it down here. Something that I recommend everybody does is to read other comics. And this doesn't have to be reading in like the traditional sense where you actually sit down and you read a page, like actually invest yourself in the comic. What I did at the start of Forget Me Not 2 and towards the end of Forget Me Not 1, but I really didn't do it enough with Forget Me Not 1, is I have a whole bunch of graphic novels that I'm literally looking at right now as I say this. I've got a bunch of Constantine ones. I think I've got like 5 Constantine books in there. I've got the Walking Dead Compendium, I've got Deceased, I've got issue 1 of IDW Sonic the Hedgehog, I've got Fables, I've got a bunch of independent comics from Free Comic Book Day. I've also got, shout out to Michelle Lamb, or Michi, Mish and the Bad Demon, which I bought the other day, which I haven't made a public post about yet because I want to fully read it, but Mish the Bad Demon is currently in my possession again. And it's a really, really good idea to get a vibe on how other comic artists panel their work and how other comic artists do this kind of stuff. And there is one page that I don't feel comfortable showing on stream right now because it's also a bit of a spoiler, and I've already showed one page that I didn't want to show. But I have one comic page that it's like a character standing in the middle. It's like a full shot of this character standing, and there is a spiral behind them, right? And the whole gimmick is that, actually that's not correct, but like kind of like that, right? It's close enough. It gets the message across. It's just a thumbnail. And the gimmick was that these little bits here in the spiral were the panels, right? Almost kind of like film, like traditional film, right? And I got this idea from, I think it was a Spider-Man comic. Literally what I did was I went onto Chrome. Let me see if I can find the exact page. I went onto Chrome and I looked up spiral comic page or something like that. A spiral comic panels or something. It wasn't exactly like this. I remember it being like a Spider-Man or a superhero themed comic, and the character was falling, and like the spiral was to kind of show as he was falling from this really tall building. I cannot remember where it was from because I literally just went on Google and looked at a bunch of different things. But this is like, there are so many comic artists out there that have so many interesting ways of paneling their comics, right? And you should use that to your advantage when it comes to trying to figure out how to panel your stuff in the most interesting way possible, you know? There was one up here that I really liked. It's technically not a comic page, it's more of an illustration, but look at this. You can do that. That shit's amazing, right? Stuff like that. That's way too small. But stuff like this, I would say read a bunch of comics, go on to Google, look for like panel layouts, take photos, you know, just make a folder of comic like panel layouts that you think are really interesting and that really caught your eye. And then when it comes to certain scenes in your book where you need something to have a really hard punch or something's just not as visually appealing, you have something to fall back on, you know? I'm kind of guilty of this. With my Walking Dead book, I haven't actually read all of it. I would just flick through and find comic panels that I really liked and take reference from there. I would recommend you actually read the other comics instead of flipping through, but if you don't have the time and you are just flipping through for inspiration, that's also perfectly fine. Another thing that I like to do that, again, you don't have to, but I think really impacts like the way that people read your comic is something called the page turner. Let me try and find an example with book 1, because book 1's paneling was absolute trash, but I tried so fucking hard to follow this page turner rule. So let me see if I can find a good example. So what the page turner is, I believe I heard of this years and years and years ago from someone who made like a Junji Ito video. I honestly think that's where it came from, but it's stuck with me ever since. And so what the page turner is, right, is basically if you have something big happening in your comic, right, like when Caden meets Haley again for the first time in book 1, for example, right? The way that that's written in the script is that he's super, super excited to see Siobhan again. He picks her up, he throws her around, he gives her a big hug, he's so excited. And then Haley steps out and asks Siobhan, hey, do you know this guy? And Caden has a lot of emotional trauma related to Haley. And so his reaction is to turn around and go, you, right? And that's something, it's like, oh, you? Like, what is he talking about? Does he know this girl? Like, why doesn't she know him? This, that, and the other. And it raises a bunch of questions. And that's what makes people want to turn the page and keep reading. That's why it's called the page turner effect. So, I don't really need this anymore. So when there's something big happening in your comic, you really want to try and make it the bottom of the page. Like, I don't think this is the best example because the last bubble here is, I don't think we'll be seeing much snow where we are. I think a better idea would have probably been to put Siobhan's reaction, like, oh, why wouldn't we? Or Haley calling him a pooper, which I think is the next line. But you really want something, I mean, I guess it kind of works because he's super up, like, down in the dumps and being an edgy boy, but you really want to put the shocking stuff, or the stuff that's like, oh, wait, hang on, the stuff that raises questions, the stuff that piques people's interest, on the bottom of the page. And one example of that is page 11 of Forget Me Not Aconite, the first book. This is what I was talking about. Oh my god, Siobhan, I missed you so much. He picks her up, he drags her around, he throws her up. It's super cute. I love it. It's super cute. And then, again, storyboard brain, but ignore that. That's not what we're talking about right now. You see Haley with her motorbike helmet. You know this guy, Vaughn. And then you see Caden's face. You see the surprise. And then you see the hatred. You. And then her reaction, I'm sorry, have we met before? Immediately, this raises questions. Why does Caden recognize her, but Haley doesn't recognize him? Why is he so angry? What happened here? Like, you're just as confused as Haley is. And then that's like, okay, shit, something's happening here. What's happening? And then you go to page 12. Right? And you see his reaction. Like, how dare you not remember me? Blah, 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 blah. This is probably the most interesting page layout of the entire book, by the way. He gets super angry. He's like, how dare you? And poor Siobhan, like, unaware of anything, is like, of course you know this guy. And you can see how pissed off Caden is by her reactions. Like, uh-oh, things aren't going really well. He's really pissed at what she's saying to him. What is he gonna do? And then you go to page 13, and so on and so on and so on. And so the page turner, again, it's impossible to make every single page of a comic a page turner. It's kind of like the, if that's what you're aiming for, then you'll end up with what I call Netflix syndrome, or Netflix original syndrome, where the show is absolutely terrible, right? It's so forgettable, all the characters are kind of like wishy-washy, kind of meh, but then one thing happens at the end of the episode that catches you completely off guard, and you're like, oh shit, now I have to know what happens, and then you click next episode. You can't really do that with every single comic page, because then you end up like a Netflix original with forgettable characters, with forgettable plot points, and people are literally just living for the, oh shit, I need to know what happens next. But you're not going to resonate with people. People aren't really going to remember all the fine little details and all the effort you put in. So not every page can be a page turner. I get it. I worked really hard on Forget Me Not Aconite to try and make every page a page turner, and that's why, or part of the reason why, the layout for the comic pages is so wonky, because I would try to fit too much dialogue in some areas and not enough dialogue in other areas just to make sure the page ended a certain way. And I think the comic really suffered for that. So it's something to keep in mind. It's something that really helps keep people invested and keep people reading your comic, but you don't have to do it every single page. It's just a really cool, really neat trick that I like to do to keep people invested and keep people coming back. So this is all stuff that I keep in mind while I'm thumbnailing. This is what goes on in my brain. Read other comics, your comics are not storyboards, and the page turner effect, okay? Those are the 3 things that go through my brain when I'm reading, or when I'm thumbnailing comics, right? So let's say, for example, like we have a thumbnailed page, we really like the layout, we like where all the speech bubbles are, it's approved, it's ready to go. This is where I'm gonna bring an old page in, one that's probably still got the roughs. Here, we'll do this one. Because we redrew this one on stream. That's the new page. It's looking really good. Anyway, so let's say that we have a thumbnail. Thumbnail is approved. We really like how the layout is. It's got a page turner. It's got like everything that we want in a page, and we're ready to go. What I'll normally do is I work with 2 monitors, and I also have my iPad, which is what I do my thumbnails on. So I'll have character references on my monitor. I'll have the thumbnails on my iPad in front of me, and I will sketch out. So this is where you bring your thumbnails into actual rough sketches. My rough sketches, at least back in the day, looked like chicken scratch because I was trying so hard to make sure proportions were correct. I was trying so hard to make sure that like I only ever needed to sketch something once. I do all of my sketches on 1 layer these days. At least I used to. But this art style, I tend to layer things and kind of be a bit more loose and a bit more free-forming these days, but doesn't matter how your sketches look. I would say the classic advice, draw with your elbow, not with your wrist. I have a lot of wrist problems because I would overwork my hand while I was working, and so now I have to take extra care of my hand extra care of my wrist, because I was using improper drawing practices. Always draw with your elbow. Anyway, normally I would have the boxes as well. So I would map out the boxes and then I would do the sketch. And then from here, it's pretty straightforward. You follow your thumbnail to the best of your ability, which is what I did here. I can't show you the thumbnail, any Forget-Me-Not thumbnails, because they're Patreon rewards. So if you want to see the thumbnails for Forget-Me-Not Aconite and soon for Forget-Me-Not Astral Miria, they're on Patreon. That's why I decided to make my own thumbnail for this video, for this stream, sorry, because I just can't show you the Forget-Me-Not ones. It's a Patreon reward. But anyway, so you copy your thumbnail as much as you can, you expand on it, you give it more detail, you kind of edit things around. I don't think I did any editing for the thumbnail on this one, because I think the thumbnail was already like pretty solid. But this is where you refine your idea. You give it more detail, you give it more life. And then, yeah, from here, it's like super, super, super straightforward. From here, you go line art, right? And then flat color. This isn't how I shade anymore, but you go shading, and then any other visual effects that you might need. And bam. Now, when it comes to this, I use Clip Studio Paint, just as a heads up, I guess. I use Clip Studio Paint when it comes to this stuff. So what I will do is, where's the line art? I'll have my line art like this, right? And when I color stuff, normally what I do is I have my bucket tool on the left-hand side of the screen, and I might blow this out so that you guys can see it, so that I don't have to edit my stream layout for it. But this is the bucket tool settings. What I will do is I will have the bucket tool set to refer to other layers, right? This is crucial because it saves you so much fucking time. So I set it to refer to other layers. I have close gaps set on, and like a bunch of other settings that you can play with to however much you like, but the most important one is refer to other layers. So you have that. I make a new layer. This is not the line art layer. This is a blank layer that's got nothing attached to it, and you have to make sure that the sketch is turned off. The only things that you need on right now are the boxes, like the panels, and the line art. That's all you need turned on right now. And so let's grab just a random color, right? Because I have referred to other layers on, and I have the line art layer and the box layer on, when I go onto my blank layer that's got absolutely nothing on it, and I click here, the hair is colored. The hair is colored, and generally this, you can't leave it like this. Like, obviously it didn't color that bit there, so eventually you will have to go in and you will have to manually color things, make sure that it's colored every single corner and crevice, especially if you've got little sharp assets, like Siobhan. She's got very sharp hair. But it saves you so much time, because I can literally just blink and then it's colored, right? And so that's how I do my coloring. I literally just make a new layer, make sure my paint bucket refers to other layers, and then I blink it all in. Saves me so much fucking time, I tell ya. So you got all your flat colors done, right? You've gone through, you've colored all of the sharp areas, you've made sure that the paint bucket, like whatever errors the paint bucket made are like, I'm gonna have to redraw that car, because I redesigned the car. But you've gone through and you've filled in any gaps that the paint bucket tool might have missed and stuff like that. Now what I like to do is I like to do some shading. And so I have a very specific document. I have an overlays document, right? I'm gonna be hella zoomed in because I don't want to reveal how I create all of these overlays. And the reason why I don't want to reveal how I create all of these overlays is because I kind of want to make it a Patreon reward to show my overlays and how I do things, and like kind of make some overlay presets, like use this color for shading, use this color for shadows, make this one an overlay, do this, that, and the other, and blah blah blah, and like kind of like a guide. So I'm not going to show you exactly how I do things, but generally speaking, what I am comfortable sharing with you guys is I have two highlight colors. As you can see, there's like a super bright color and then there's a not so bright color underneath. And then I also have two shadow colors, which is the exact same thing. And then I have one color that goes over top everything to kind of unify all the colors together, as you can see. So I have a couple of settings. They're all named. I have Day City, because the city is a main location in the second book, and so this is what it looks like in the city during the day. I have Dark and Moody for the more somber, slightly more emotional scenes. I have Night for when things are kind of dark and maybe a little bit moody, but not like super dramatic, emotional, melancholy type thing. This is literally just nighttime. And then I have Early Morning, which is called Early Morning, but I mostly use it for the cutesy, warm, fuzzy scenes. So these are the four main ones that I use. I do have some extra ones that I just haven't put on this list. But what I will do is I'll open up this reference sheet and I'll color pick the highlight colors, the shadow colors, the overlay colors, and I'll basically copy this. This is my cheat sheet to make sure all of the lighting and shading is consistent throughout the book. So that's what I've done here, right? So I have the first highlight layer, right? And normally when I'm deciding where highlight colors go, particularly in this scene because they're in a car and there's a lot of windows, what I like to do is like, okay, there's a window here, right? Because he's like in the driver's seat. There's a window here because this is the passenger seat, and there's also a window behind. And those are your three light sources. And so you have to keep all three of those light sources in mind when you do this kind of stuff, which explains why, you know, it's kind of slightly thicker here because he's right next to the window, and there's still highlights here, but they're a lot thinner because it's just kind of catching from the back window. And the same with Siobhan, right? And you're always keeping track of the highlights and where the windows are. This big panel here, this is the exception. And this is an exception because of this. I just thought, because they've got this shadowing coming in from like behind her, I just thought it would look nicer if the highlight was in the back. I felt like it would make her pop a little bit more. Because she's not in a particular scene, she's just kind of plastered on top as like her own panel, so to speak. That's when I think exceptions are okay. You can just kind of put the light where you think it stylistically makes sense, as opposed to keeping all of these light sources in mind. But yeah, like, it's just something to keep in mind when it comes to making things a little more visually appealing. So you have your first highlight layer, and then I have my second highlight layer. I'm using the night pack. You can kind of see the highlight colors here. I'm using the night pack for this page, right? I still need that, so I have to leave it open. And then I do the exact same thing with the shadow layers, shadow layer 1 and shadow layer 2, right? This is just me following my highlights and shadows guide, okay? And then any extra effects that need to be added in, like for example, I like to have a screen layer over the windows just to kind of hammer home that it is in fact a window, you know? It's not just like there's actually glass there. It's not just an open hole in the car, there's actually glass. And so that's how I like to do that. And then, yeah, this is where you would go in and you would fill in any extra effects, like she's crying on this page, so you add the crying in. It's little details like this, like the crying, you need to add in the thumbnail as well. Especially if you're working with another artist, and another artist is going to be looking at your thumbnails and converting them into pages. I do all of this by myself. So if I look at a thumbnail and I decide that I don't like how something looks and I want to change it, I can literally just change it on the fly because I'm literally the only person working on this project. But if you're working with a team, you need to add all of the details either on the thumbnail or in the writing on the side. Like because she's crying here, the thumbnail would have tears like on it. And there might be a note like holding back tears or something like that. Again, it really just depends on if you're working independent or if you're working with another artist or a group of people or whatever. And then normally this overlay, like I said, has got a like kind of mood color to tie all the shading and the highlights and the color together. So if I turn off this, oops, that's the wrong layer. If I turn off this, then it doesn't really fit as nicely, you know? That kind of dark overlay ties everything together a bit nicer. And so I do that for these pages as well, but I generally make that the last step because it has to go on top of the colors, on top of the shading, on top of all of the visual effects in order to really unify everything. And so that's what this is. And yeah, that's pretty much how I make my comic pages. I think any other notes that I would have to say in terms of making like comics in general would be stuff that I've mentioned before in like other streams, and that would be references, right? Not just for comic pages, but for color palettes, for like general moods and aesthetics. Create mood boards. Something that I like to do. I kind of have mood boards in like a really weird way. I have Spotify playlists. I have a Spotify playlist for every single book that goes into the Forget Me Not series. And I slowly curate them over time before I work on the series and as I'm working on the series. Once the book is done, that's it. That playlist does not get touched ever again in terms of editing. I'll still listen to it sometimes. I get nostalgic. So yeah, references, mood boards, Spotify playlists, color palettes, comic panels, as many things as you can. Put them all in one big inspo folder, right? And then you have so many different resources that you can pull from, okay? Another one is turnarounds. Alright, turnarounds and layouts. You're gonna be drawing the same characters over and over and over again for potentially hundreds of pages. Forget Me Not Aconite was 240 pages long. Forget Me Not Astromeria is currently 100 pages long and we're not even a third of the way through the script. You're gonna be drawing these characters a lot. And so it's very, very important that you are able to draw them consistently the same. Now, a lot of people will have their characters muscle memorized, and that's fine. For a long time, I had Caden from Forget Me Not muscle memorized because that was the only project I was working on at the time. But it's still very important to have these turnarounds, because in the event where you are not able to work on a project for a long time, or you're not able to have these characters muscle memorized to begin with at all, it's really, really important to go back to the roots and remember the rules for drawing the characters. I have some really old character sheets that I don't use Siobhan's anymore because Siobhan has a new, like a new design, but I'll show you Caden's one. So what I've done is I've done a 4-point turnaround, right? Generally speaking, I made this in like 2018, 2019. I would say do a 5-point turnaround. I'm missing the front view one, and I need to make a front view one. I do have like references for what he looks like from the front, but that's not good enough. This needs to be a 5-point turnaround. And as you can see, I have color swatches for every single part of his design. They're all labeled, but more importantly, I have these. These are the character design rules for Caden. This is how you keep Caden consistent throughout the book, right? The hair flick is always the same location, as you can see on the character sheet. Always the same spot, right? He has exactly 20 stubble lines, which, give or take, depending on how close or how far away he is from the camera, when this is the length, it's 20. Or you get like I make like a smaller brush size to make sure that he's got 20. The jacket is always longer than the shirt, right? There's always this gap between where the shirt ends and where the jacket ends. The tongue of his shoes is always over his pants. And this hairline thing is always 3.5 spikes on each side. And with that stuff in mind, you can draw Caden in whatever style he wants, like you want. And as long as you follow these simple rules, it is still Caden. At least, that's how it's supposed to be. He went through a couple of changes in terms of like the size of his eyes and the placement of his eyes. But at the end of the day, it was still Caden, because you still follow all of these rules. And you need to have this for every single one of your characters in the comic. It doesn't matter how often you draw them, you need to have these down. You need to have these down in order to keep the designs consistent, because what people will do is you draw the same character over and over and over and over and over again, and sometimes you miss tiny details, sometimes you skip things, right? And that's perfectly fine. It's okay, it's fine. Which is why generally what I do is I make a character design and then I draw them like 15 to 20 times, and then I look at that last drawing that I did and I'm like, okay, that's the final design. Because drawing a character over and over and over and over and over again, subconsciously, you might not even be consciously thinking about it, but somewhere in the back of your brain is going, this detail is unnecessary, this can be simplified, I want to add this, and like just making your own subtle changes to a character when it's in the design phase. That's the easiest thing you can do. Make an official design, draw them 15 to 20 times, and that last drawing is the final design. And that's what I did with Caden. Caden used to be a lot more complicated looking than this, and I drew him a couple of times and I was like, okay, this is what I'm happy with, this is it, this is the final design. I do this for every single one of my characters. And the reason I do that is because I'm going to be drawing them so many times for the comic. I may as well do it in a way that's simple for me, that still looks interesting, and that my brain has an easier time remembering. You know what I mean? So character designs, character reference sheets, crucial. Very, very, very important. Layouts is something that I will admit I did not do for Forget Me Not 1. I didn't do it for Forget Me Not 1 because my justification is that the characters were never going to be in one location for very long regardless, so it didn't really matter if I had a layout or not, because they were only there for maybe a maximum of 25 pages, and then they'd be out and they'd be somewhere else. The only problem with this is that I didn't even have a layout sheet for the car, and like they're in the car for half of the comic, so I really, really should have had a layout page for the comic, for the car. But essentially what this means is if you have a location that's kind of prominent in the comic, you need to have maps, you need to have exterior design, you need to have interior design, you need to have all that kind of ugly nitty-gritty stuff. And I learned that the hard way because in Forget Me Not 2 there is one location known as Alma. Alma is the main location of the entire comic. It's not like Forget Me Not 1. Forget Me Not 1, they're in a different location every chapter. Forget Me Not 2, this is kind of like the main location. And I started drawing Alma without any layouts. And so all of the buildings look like this. All of them. They all looked exactly the same, right? Maybe if one was a cafeteria, it'd have a little table out the front, but then the building right next to it would look exactly the same, and it just wouldn't have the table in front. And I was like, yeah, cool, the reader will know the difference. The reader's not gonna fucking know the difference. Your backgrounds, your environments should have as much personality and as much design as your characters. And I know some people are not gonna like that because they're character designers, they're character animators. They focus so much on their characters. They don't do backgrounds. Backgrounds is just not them. If you're an independent creator, you need to learn backgrounds. You need to learn interior design. You need to learn exterior design. You need to learn to push the boundaries of designing environments the same way that you push the boundaries of designing your characters. Because no one's gonna read a book where the characters are okay, the characters are nice, the characters are fun, but the backgrounds are the same dumb shit over and over and over again. It's not entertaining. Your backgrounds need to have as much personality as the characters themselves in order to make the world feel convincing, in order to make it feel believable, and in order for your audience to be engaged. That's just it. That's just how it is. And I would love to show you some of the stuff that I did for Alma in order to give it more personality. But one, that's a spoiler. And two, even if I wanted to, those mock-ups, all of that design stuff is on my iPad. All of my drafts, all of my mock-ups, all of my thumbnails, it is all on my iPad. So, design your backgrounds. Design your backgrounds. The easiest way I can think for people to do this is The Sims, because currently The Sims is free and you don't have to buy any of the expansion packs. There are so many free digital downloads that modders have created. Thank you, The Rogue. There are so many free mods and free expansion packs that the community has made that add assets and add certain features to the game, where you can literally just download a free copy of The Sims 4, because I believe The Sims 4 is free now. Download a bunch of these free expansion packs, these free asset packs that the community has made, design your interior, design your exterior, and you didn't even have to draw anything. That's your reference. When you go to make the backgrounds for your pages, you can use those photos as reference for your backgrounds. You don't have to design everything from scratch like the traditional drawing way if you don't want to. Another good way, a lot more expensive way if you don't have a Switch, is Animal Crossing. I love interior design in Animal Crossing, and that's probably what made me be like, fuck, I gotta do interior design for my comics. Again, a whole lot of different items, a whole lot of customization options. I would honestly, if I had to pick between the two, I would go with The Sims 4, just because the modding community has made there's countless assets you can choose from. And the camera mode in The Sims as well, you can literally pick any camera angle that you want. And if you really, really wanted to, you could just pick a camera angle, like kind of just yoink it from The Sims, take a screenshot, and just trace over it for your comic. No one, like, you are doing comic design, right? You are gonna be drawing for hours upon fucking hours. Take as many shortcuts as you can, which is probably my next tip. Shortcuts. Shortcuts are absolutely most definitely allowed in this medium. Whoever said that using custom brushes was cheating, whoever said using The Sims to design your backgrounds and like drawing over it is cheating, whoever said any of that stuff is cheating, I'm sorry, you're fucking retarded. You cannot expect me or any other comic artist to sit here and pour hundreds of hours into a comic page because, I don't know, one of the panels needed a stack of coins or something. I'm not gonna spend like 10-20 hours drawing a fat stack of coins when I can literally just buy or download a coin brush asset from the Clip Studio store and have it done in like 5 minutes. Sorry, that's not fucking happening. Take shortcuts. Use custom brushes. use custom brushes, take screenshots from The Sims, you know, like any little shortcut that you can find, as long as it doesn't affect the quality of the comic, as long as it doesn't lower the quality of your comic, fucking take it. Take it. Comics are incredibly time consuming. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into this stuff. If you can make your life easier and still have the final product come out desirable, then you are doing something right. I got very passionate about that. I'm very sorry. I've been doing comics for a while now. I'm very passionate about a bunch of different things. But yeah, references. Collect as many references as you can, right? Make inspo folders. Do that kind of stuff. Turnarounds and layouts are incredibly important. Shortcuts, as long as the quality of your comic is not hindered, absolutely. And I talked a lot about backgrounds, so I'm going to write backgrounds down. If I can only give you just a few tips from this entire stream, it would be these 4. Right? Learn to do backgrounds. Learn to give your backgrounds personality. I think by far that's one of the most important tips that I can give. And then I also have my tips from up here. Read other comics. Remember the page turner effect. It's incredibly effective if you utilize it properly. The page turner effect has literally saved my comic in a bunch of different states. Forget Me Not's almost got 300 readers on Webtoon right now. It's got 290, which in the grand scheme of like the internet is not a lot. But if 290 people came up to me and said, hey, your comic is pretty good, I would probably burst into tears and collapse and have a mental breakdown, because 290 people in front of me is a lot of people. So remember the page turner effect. Remember to explore the boundaries of comics. Don't think in this storyboard artist mentality. It's not going to help you. It's only going to hinder you. Think outside the box, quite literally. Quite fucking literally. Think outside the box, right? Get fun with it. Get wacky with it. Get crazy with it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have to say, but I think in terms of comic design, that's pretty much it. At least off the top of my head. I didn't script any of this. I rambled for an hour and 15 minutes about how I make comics and my overlay system and the storyboards and the page turner effect and all of that, just all off the top of my head. I didn't actually script anything. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have to mention. I don't want to talk about the publishing process today, because I think that's something that I would need to script out, and I would need to get a lot of like specific information on, which I do have, I just don't have on me right now. And we're not going to talk about actually writing the script for a comic, like actually conceiving the story, because again, that's something that I have very, very specific points on. And I have like diagrams and full-on shit like that, which I want to turn into like a full-on proper like class. This was just the easiest one for me to be like, oh yeah, I can talk about comics for a bit. I believe that's everything. Oh, this is something that I'm learning like recently. This isn't really about like the making of the comic itself, but I think it is pretty important. Websites. Your comic should have its own website, and its own website should be the main platform in which they can read your comic. You can still upload to Webtoons, you can still upload to Tapaz, but the main home page of your comic should be its own website. And Forget Me Not has had its own website for a very long time. It's just I've been failing as a comic artist to make sure that that is the main landing page of the comic, and I'm working very hard to correct that now. Literally before the stream started, I was working on a new website that's literally streamlined as the best way to read the comic, which surprisingly didn't take very long. Thank you, Wix. Wix, please sponsor me. But yes, this is more of an afterthought, like after you've made the comic, or after you've made a couple of pages to upload at least, but this is still very important. Another thing that I don't want to go into detail today, because again, it is something that I am still kind of learning, and I'm not comfortable enough to kind of talk on it in a more teaching role. But I would definitely look at trying to advertise the comic in certain ways. I will probably talk about this more in depth once I find a system that works most comfortably for me, but what I currently do to advertise Forget Me Not. First of all, Forget Me Not's been moved to the Nobilis Studios Twitter page. It's not on my personal Twitter anymore. It's on Studio Nobilis because that's where all of my future projects are going to be going. It's more of a professional, like, splitting up my opinions and my fan art and stuff from my actual projects. But something that I liked, that I did for Forget Me Not that I really like to do is I made a bunch of promotional posters, which currently are not available to purchase. You currently can't buy these. But once the website is done, I might be making them available to print. But I made a few of these that I just post to Twitter and Instagram with, like, a link to the webcomic. And, like, a couple of hashtags just to make sure the algorithm catches it. But I made a bunch of these for Forget Me Not Aconite. I'm not going to show you all of them. I'm going to show you my 3 favorite ones. This is my absolute favorite one of all time. But yeah, I made a bunch of these that go up, like, every week, just for people to be like, hey, you know, my comic exists, this is where you can read it, and, like, just say a little bit about the piece, a little bit about the comic, and stuff like that. It has worked. I have gotten a couple of extra readers from it, but this isn't the only thing that you should be doing. I would just say, look at other comic artists, look at their Twitter pages, how they run things, look at their websites. It's pretty much the exact same thing as, like, references for the comics. I would say get references for how other artists advertise and how other artists look at their websites. Like, I'm redesigning the Forget Me Not website right now, and I have a couple of, like, tutorials on how to set things up a certain way on Wix, because I can't afford to buy my own domain at the moment, crying. But then I'm also looking at the Cast Off webcomic page, and then I'm also looking at the Lackadaisy webcomic page. Those two, and then a couple of tutorials, just to kind of make sure that it has its own unique feel to it. I think that's a really important thing that you need to do as a comic artist. Eventually. This is more of an afterthought, like after the comic has been made. But this is still really important, because if you make a 240-page comic and you suck at advertising and you have no home website for it, then are people even gonna actually read it? You know? Don't let all the hard work that you put into this stuff go to waste because you're not good at this stuff. Okay? If you're an independent, this stuff is just as, if not more important than the actual making of the comic. And so if you're like me and you really suck at understanding SEOs and advertising and keywords and when to post, and you really suck at all of that, tough luck. You either learn to get good or you sink. That's pretty much it. And right now I'm trying really hard not to sink. So I think that's everything. I'm gonna put this on Twitter. No one's gonna literally understand what this is, but I'm gonna put this on Twitter. I might write what the page turner effect is before I post it. But yeah, we spent almost half of my stream runtime talking about how I make comics. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a sip of water. I'm probably gonna go and get a throat lozenge because my throat is fucking killing me. And then we're gonna stop talking about how to make comics and we're gonna actually make a comic page.